And welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the High Low Sports Podcast. We appreciate you all for joining us here on this Wednesday evening, or if it's one of your favorite places to check out podcasts later in the week. And we're going to go right into it. Is once again, DJ joined as always by my co host, Kelcey. And you know what, Kelcey, we're starting things off with a bit of a boom or a bang, or however you want to describe it, as well as it's unfortunately the last of a dying era. As we have our final Woj bomb as the retirement of the NBA insider Adrian Wojnarowski announced today that his final Woj bomb was about your boy Isaac Okoro and the Cleveland Cavaliers in the middle of the night a couple days ago. And it looks like we'll be having a new NBA insider to drop bombs on. So, Kelcey, that's your guy, the Woj bomb. It's a staple of culture at this point, and now it looks like he will be stepping aside. So, what are your first thoughts when you hear that a staple of sports media deciding to step away?
Um, maybe a bad joke when I thought about it, and what I thought of immediately was, "Wow, that's the nuclear bomb that of all nuclear bombs." But that's good for him for stepping away for what he said. He's stepping away to go be a GM for the St. Bonaventure basketball team, which is amazing. Um, good for him. But man, I'm gonna miss him. Like he was one. There's very few of these type of uh, reporters, analysts, whatever you want to call them, that I trust. And I feel like Woj has well and truly earned his stripes. He is the guy that when something came out, it may not be right then, but within the next 24 hours of that coming out, he was right. I mean, we're talking a 98% correctness rate, which is insane when you consider where some of these reporters are today. So yeah, I'm going to miss him. I'd love to have him on the show to talk about his time and then obviously his new ventures. But yeah, this one kind of caught me off guard today, and I was sitting at work when everybody started blowing up the group chats, and I was like, wait, what? I thought it was a joke. I had to double check the date, make sure it wasn't April Fool's Day.
Absolutely. What's interesting is the guy that is replacing him. His first name eludes me, but his last name is Rosenblum, so you'll get some Rosenbombs. So at least there's some nice wordplay there. And as far as insiders go, guys, basically the guys that get the scoops, that sort of thing, I feel like he was the gold standard, not just for NBA, but across sports, especially compared to some other insiders who will not be named, who can't seem to make a tweet without insulting people directly or saying bad things about other people at a very rough time, ruining retirements. Won't go into any names specifically, but compared to other insiders, he was the gold standard compared to insiders in other sports whose names will not be named for those listening on audio. Those who are watching the stream, well, a picture's worth 1,000 words, so we won't. Either way. Point being, him and Shams was almost the war that we all wanted and needed in it for better, and we're unfortunately not going to get that anymore. So, gonna miss the Woj bombs. He was a one of a kind and revolutionized. And I remember seeing the joke too. It's like he woke up in the middle of the night to see an Isaac Okoro news break and had to tweet about it. That's when he reevaluated his life. Like, I am not going to be woken up in the middle of the night for Isaac Okoro. This is not going to happen.
Honestly, I laugh about it, but I think truly, I do think basketball has always been his calling. And I think this is a situation. If he's going to step away from anything, if it wasn't just a pure retirement, I think this is the one thing for him to step away to go do that makes so much sense for Woj. The only thing beyond this would have been being a GM in the NBA. Because at this point in time, I feel like maybe it's insider trading. Maybe that's why he can't be a GM in the NBA. Maybe he needs to step away for a couple years and they can allow him back in the NBA like the Jordan rule. I mean, sorry, he just totally retired too, didn't he? Anyways, but yeah, no, I do think this is a situation with Woj where if he's going to step away, I'm happy to see what he can do at the college level. I think it's going to be fun to see, and honestly, I wouldn't be surprised to see potentially an NBA appearance from him in the next 5 years if he does well.
If he wants it, of course. And that's the biggest thing is, it looks like he walked away on his own terms. He wasn't a mass casualty firing from ESPN or something like that, which is it's nice when you can get out on your own terms, especially in that business where it is very cutthroat. So good on him. He gets to get out on his own terms when he wants to and gets to go do what he wants. And he's built up so much street cred. He could do just about anything he wants at this point too. So he's got that going for him. But that's going to be the Woj bomb. We are definitely going to miss him out. Hopefully, he still just randomly drops one just for fun here or there, even if it's not NBA related. Just like breaking, we won our first game or something like that. Just uses that Woj bomb platform he's built just for fun and giggles. But
Woj bomb, first blue chip recruit.
There we go. Now we're getting something as well. Or maybe we see him in an interview or something like that on ESPN. Either way, I think it's going to be fun keeping up with his career regardless as well. But going to miss the Woj bombs, but that's going to lead us right into we're going to go into our opening statement. We had to get that out there really quickly because that's the big bomb news of the day. Rosen bombs, here they come. I look forward to those as well. The NBA draft will never be fun again as if he picks up 85% of what Woj did. So we'll get all the picks 5 minutes ahead of time. So the
Yeah.
the ball's in your guys' corner, Rosenblum and Shams, no pun intended. But that's gonna
Yeah,
do it here.
I don't want to get shammed out of this one. That's all I gotta say. That's the
There
only
we
dad
go.
joke I got today.
And you know what? We'll keep the FanDuel partnership part out of it as well too. That's why we'll take both with a grain of salt. But that's going to now lead us into the first part of our show, our normally scheduled program, with the tip off brought to you, of course, by SeatGeek. Use code Belly of Sports for $20 off your first set of tickets on any sporting event, concert, anything that requires tickets. Belly Up Sports at SeatGeek, and get yourself your free set of tickets wherever you might need to be, including potentially a Panthers game where you will not see Bryce Young as the starting quarterback, at least in the foreseeable future. Is Bryce Young getting told he will be benched and Andy Dalton will be starting today? And I have a lot I kind of want to say on this, so I'm going to go ahead and let Kelcey go first here. Normally I like to start, then we go back and forth, but Kelcey, I'm going to let you take the reins because I got a checklist I want to go through on this one. So I'm going to let you break it in before I dive through the ice.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I don't have a whole lot to say about this other than what I've been preaching this entire time, which is what do you expect a first round quarterback who is undersized and underdeveloped going into this situation to do when you give him sticks and stems? If nobody gets the reference, just listen to a Snoop song. You might get it.
Hmm.
But look, this is a situation where he was put into probably the worst possible situation of any at first round draft pick, I think, in the last 20 years or longer. Just because you have the overturn of the management and the ownership, you have the terrible seasons around it, literally shipping out every single player to the point where you're like, I don't know who's going to be my receiver. Oh, let's go get Adam Thielen. Like,
Not young
those
Adam
aren't
Thielen
great.
or 40-year-old Adam
Yeah.
Thielen.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I joke about it being Adam Thielen's 40, and obviously I'm talking more about the guy sitting on the corner drinking a Colt 40 than a Colt 45 specifically, than more than him actually being 40 years old, but applies now. And yeah, that's like when you're second best player, and I saw this ranking, one of the countless podcasts that I always catch, did a ranking for the second best player on all 32 teams. The 32nd team, like the 32nd ranked second best player, was Adam Thielen. When your second best player is Adam Thielen, we have a problem. And so, yeah, I'm going to leave it at that. I think there's a whole lot of work that needs to be done besides just Bryce, but this might be the best thing to happen to Bryce, a la Baker Mayfield potentially. But yeah, that's where I'll leave it. I'll let you take it from there.
That was a good segue because the first thing I'm going to start off is let's look at what has happened recently with them. They had Sam Darnold and Baker Mayfield on the roster at the same time, and look what they're both doing right now. They both look better than ever. Granted, there's certain things you can't directly compare, I guess, but at the same time, because those are different teams than what it is now. Those ones had CMC, DJ Moore, 6 and 1 and half a dozen the other. We could slice it however we want, but point is, they get away from there and they are playing the best of their careers. Baker Mayfield's now with franchise quarterback, and Sam Darnold might be well on his way to being one. Granted, he's also only like 26, so maybe he just got thrown into the ghost too soon, which kind of goes into part two with the unfair stigma that's come around the rookie quarterbacks because of Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, these freakish outliers who are so freaky good at 22 and 23 years old. The entire lifetime process has been thrown out the window because that for those who are listening on audio, there are some massive finger quotes going on right now. Must win with the quarterback on a rookie deal. That's not how that is not historically how it's worked. You got the anomalies recently with that. You got the Russell Wilson and the Legion of Boom. You got some rare instances where it happened. And how often does that work out? They kick him to the curb once they realize it's not going to happen. We see it time and time again. Sam Darnold kicked to the curb. Zach Wilson kicked to the curb. Granted, some of these guys, it is also bad play. Like, they're not excused. Bryce Young has not played well in his one
Right.
season in 2 games. Granted, Daniel Jones has started 66 games. Bryce Young has started 19, I think, 18, and they're already kicking him to the curb. And Daniel Jones is still getting a chance to go. They have built 2 different sets of teams around him with 2 different regimes. They gave him a chance. Trevor Lawrence, see, we always joke we don't count the rookie year because Urban Meyer was there. That's hit that one automatically does not count.
Legitimately kicking people to the curb.
Literally, like not even figuratively. So we don't count that one. And he's been given a little bit of time to develop, which is right now it's a little bit like, Trevor, you got to get going. They might have paid him too soon, but that's the way it goes. We look at pretty much Matthew Stafford. He had plenty of time to develop. As a rookie, he was throwing touchdowns and picks. He was slinging it away. As a whole, every position gets time to develop. The ones who come out firing like CJ Stroud, CJ Stroud, Patrick Mahomes, etc. Those are the anomalies. They shouldn't be the norm. Josh Allen was miserable his first year. His second year, he was rough, but they were able to win because they had a good team around him. Third year, he took off. I think this is more of an indictment on the Panthers and what they did. Look at how much has changed in a year. You brought in Frank Reich, Josh McCown, I think defensive coordinator from the Broncos. I think it was Vance Joseph, I believe, was it who it was? They brought in the
Yes.
BDC. You brought in so many pieces, and then you traded, but then you traded away all your pieces to trade to go. Sorry, brought in so many coaching pieces, then traded away all your offensive pieces to go get him. And then you started him immediately, which you mentioned. An outlier, you rarely want to take an outlier at number one. You took him because, as a lot of the scouting reports were, he was the best on the whiteboard that they've seen. He knows how to play the position. He's batting uphill being at 5'9" and a $185. I don't care if he was 200 at the combine. That's a lot. And he's not 5'9". I'm saying that in cleats.
Cleats and
you already needed to be basically perfect to process at that point. You have to be the perfect processor and get the ball out quick and accurately. It's hard to do that when no one's open. It's hard to do that when you're getting attacked immediately. You don't get time to digest. You don't get time to see it. Don't get me wrong. Bryce has played terrible when he has had guys open. He has airmailed them. So this year especially, it's looked really bad. Even when he's not getting sacked, he is missing by a mile. And the body languages he is defeated, which kind of brings me to my next point. I almost wonder, we'll never know for sure, if Canales, who was brought in to quote unquote fix Bryce Young, there's the finger quotes because he doesn't need fixing. He's 23 years old. But he was supposed to be like the QB whisperer like he did with Baker Mayfield, etc. I almost wonder if he's benching Bryce for his own good at this point. Like, look, man, you're getting killed and things are not clicking right now. I do not want to keep throwing you out there to die. We're to throw Andy Dalton out there to die for now. He's been paid enough. He wants to do it. He's 36 now. He's seen the game for a while. He's played for more than a decade. He'll help us win a little bit. You'll get a chance to learn we're not done with you. Hopefully. Maybe that's just to help build his confidence. We don't know that. And then the expectations immediately plummet when he does come back in. No one expects anything. If he throws a touchdown pass, they're going to have a parade in Charlotte. So it could be just resetting expectations. And frankly, they stink still. They as a whole, they still kind of stink. Like there's no way around it. They can't stop anybody. And offensively, they have to be on point every single play. They aren't very explosive. Everything has to be a perfect, methodical paper cuts drive, which is hard to do sometimes, especially when you're, like you said, the second best player on your team is a 40-year-old Adam Thielen, who is not exactly ever known as an athlete. So they're doing him no favors. He's doing himself no favors. So I wonder if there's a little bit to that. And frankly, they just need, I think some of these quarterbacks need to sit more, or they need to get a much longer leash, which starts with the coaches need to get a longer leash and the GMs need to get a longer leash in this case. Frank Reich didn't even make it a year. You brought him in to develop Bryce Young, a quarterback all rumors say he didn't want. He wanted CJ Stroud. The entire staff wanted CJ Stroud. Then you say, no. You're taking this guy, and we're taking away all your weapons. Yeah. So I don't think this is the end of Bryce Young. I think we're going to see, it's very common. We see it, Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold, Jared Goff. They have the opportunity to revitalize their career once they get time to learn. Because I think Jared Goff, he had a decent leash, but then they immediately cut him for Matthew Stafford, who's still a top 10 quarterback. So that one makes little sense, and it made Jared Goff caught better. Baker Mayfield had to play on 4 teams in 1 year, literally a calendar year, and now he's peaked. Sometimes getting away from a situation like that works out. There's been some goofy ideas like maybe trade Bryce Young. I don't think Carolina should. I don't think they should give up on him yet. What are you going to do? Go draft Shedeur Sanders and throw him in here? How's that going to work out? Go grab
the dude already leads college football in sacks. Do you really want him to break David Carr's record in sacks?
They do want to bring in Quinn Ewers. I mean, what are you going to do? You can tank for 2 years and try and get Arch Manning? Like, are you going to try and get the number 1 pick 4 years in a row, basically? Like, I don't know. I won't get too far into that, but it feels like they're doing them a disservice by not giving them time. It's a 22, 23-year-old kid playing with 30-year-olds in a league where they're not giving quarterbacks time to develop. They're basically the coaches are forced to win on that rookie deal. So there's which we're going to get into in our next topic here. I'll go more in depth on too, because this is my nerd out segment, guys. If you're here for it, I love it. If not, I'm sorry, but this is my nerd out. The tip off's going to be DJ's nerd session, but Bryce is he's played bad. I think this is going to be good for him long term. If they are trying to trade him, which I think would be stupid, the Rams, perfect fit. You have Matthew Stafford, I know that, but he is almost 40, has had some injuries. You need him and Sean McVay. Look what he did for Baker. He gave Baker a chance, and now Baker's a franchise quarterback. You bring him in there, you're going to have Puka Nacua now for your career, Cooper Kupp for a couple more years, Kyron Williams, Blake Corum. That's a good option for him. And if the Rams continue to be hurt and start having the tank, you could trade Stafford and get some picks too, possibly. Maybe Stafford to Miami. I think it was Chase Daniel put together a very goofy 3-team trade of Stafford to Miami, and then Bryce Young to LA, and then a bunch of picks to Carolina in between from both of those teams. I don't like that idea personally, but for Bryce, I think I like it for Bryce. Everybody else,
Yeah.
actually, I like it for Stafford. Give him Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, Devin H. You know what? I like this trade a lot more. Chase
He
Daniel,
actually
you
gets
might be on.
receivers again.
Chase Daniel, you might be onto something actually. Now, the more I think about it, but I don't think this is the end of Bryce. I think it is. I hope it is. I've been long winded, and it's Kelcey's turn to talk here for our next topic, but I do
Well,
think Dave Canales is doing this for Bryce's own good. At least I hope so. Because I think he took this job knowing you were brought here to get the most out of Bryce Young. They gave up more for him than any recent draft day trade, not draft, any draft trade up I could think of recently. Like, I can't really think of one that quite matches with how much they gave up. And there has been zero ROI at this point. So
yeah,
I think he was brought here to do it, and I think he's doing this for Bryce. He probably told the owner, "You're gonna have to fire me, but we're benching him for a minute. If you don't like it, David Temper, go and fire me," which he just might, but that's good for Canals in
that's
that case. It's a win-win for him. So I hope
yeah.
that's the case.
It's kind of funny when we talked about who's going to get the job in Carolina, right? That was if we go back to what we talked about in the offseason, in the early offseason, we talked about who's going to get this job, and my takeaway was for Temper, he's going to want to play. He's going to want to coach he can boss around,
Mhm.
and that was his big thing. He thought he can get that with Canales. With this move, I do think this is Canales being like, you know what? Fire me if you want to, but I'm doing what's best for this kid. I'm doing
And
what's
for
best
him
for
too,
this
'cause they gotta
quarterback.
win too.
Yeah, and for him, I think he's smart enough to realize that Andy Dalton still has 10 games in his tank. As far as may not win 10 games, maybe 10 games over 2 seasons, but he's not going to finish dead last in the NFL. And I think that's the part where he's at right now, where he is at such an absence of talent across the board. It's not just the offensive side of the ball; it's both sides of the ball right now. With Derek Brown hurt, Adam Thielen as your really right now. Now he's your best player on the field because Derek Brown's hurt. And that just can't happen. And we've talked about a lot about this in other leagues, like the NBA specifically, and even to some degree baseball. This idea that teams can just tank and there's no repercussions. How embarrassing is it that you're selling tickets for $3 to a home game in the NFL while charging $20 for a beer for the 700 fans while you just had a first round draft pick, you have a top 10 draft pick, you have 3 other top 10 draft picks that you've had on your team in the last 3 years, that one's still there. The other two are gone, shipped out. Goodbye. And this one, we don't know what your plan is, Temper, but at the same time, it's embarrassing because you guys are in a hotbed of football. The Carolinas are a hotbed of football. And you have 2 states to draw from. You're the only team in the country that can say they represent 2 states alone. Some might argue the Patriots, but they're also not necessarily a hotbed of football in the same right. This is a place where players flock to, teams flock to this team, fans flock to this team to watch, and you're putting out a subpar performance at best. And it's embarrassing, and it needs to be better. It needs to be something where you're just not garbage week in and week out. And I don't like saying that a team full of professional athletes is garbage because I know good and well I can get ran off that field in a heartbeat by 98% of those guys. But at the same time, when I can't say 100% convincingly, that should also be a problem. So there's a lot of problems with this Carolina team, and it's not just Bryce. So him getting benched, good for Bryce. I hope Canales gets an opportunity to really develop a player. But yeah, microwave quarterbacks are the worst thing to ever happen in the league, and I don't say that from the fact that as a team as a fan of a team who had a microwave quarterback in Dak, I can tell you firsthand that it's great for 4 years, and then you get the plateau that he never crosses, and that's a problem with this situation with Bryce. If he gets a real opportunity to develop in 4 years, he's making his first full season start again. And he's fully trained and prepared to handle any offense and any defense out there with any call at the line of scrimmage you need. And that's what the hope is for Bryce. Obviously not 4 years, but more like 2. But it's just like, you gotta give the kid a chance and a fair chance. Everybody expects, there's all these super advanced analytics. I saw a video that's like, oh, we can't continue to complain that a guy just doesn't have talent when you look at this. The next gen advanced this, that, and the other. And I'm like, maybe you're just staring too hard at the numbers and not watching on the field, because when I see that quarterback drop back, I don't see a guy who's dropping back with any confidence that his offensive line is going to be able to hold up to any pressure. And that's where I have a problem with these statistics that are saying, oh, well, he has the worst statistical completion percentage since Josh Rosen. Yeah, difference is Josh Rosen had somewhat of talent around him. Not much better, but slightly better talent. So people need to calm down, give him an opportunity, let him develop. But yeah, it sucks to see it, because you do hope for the best for somebody.
I have a few more things. I do love that you brought up Josh Rosen, because it's funny, because they might have also ruined it for everybody else. They draft Josh Rosen, and next year they double down and go with Kyler Murray, pick number 1, and it worked out for them because, frankly, as we've seen with Josh Rosen, it didn't work out where Kyler Murray's been pretty awesome when he's been healthy. So that should be the anomaly, but I think a lot more people are trying to make it the norm now if they don't like what they see right away. With Bryce, I think he's already a physical outlier, which we've mentioned too. Like he was already going to be very physically limited, so you needed to give the right tools around him, and then he could be very Brock Purdy-esque, where it doesn't have to be the Avengers around him, but just give him a little bit of something to work, something where he could process quickly and let the ball fly. The right concepts where people either break open or just different types of checkdowns, something like that. He's never going to CJ Stroud it. Like
Give him a
CJ
game
Stroud,
break.
unfortunately, him being in the same draft as CJ Stroud is unfair, because CJ Stroud came out of the gate and was throwing absolute darts. That's unfortunately unfair for him. But on top of that, it's not just that. Passing across the NFL has kind of declined, which I think is a good segue into the next thing that we are looking at is passing numbers in the NFL. There's all the talk about rules for quarterbacks and offenses, but it has not been really shown on the field. We're going to pop up this graphic that's been circulating. Passing touchdowns through the first 2 weeks. We are at 69. Nice. So far for 2024, including Monday night. I know some people saw this graphic on X before Monday night. I went ahead and did the math and added the Monday night on there. Let's look where we are in just 2021. Not even a full 4 years ago. Not even a full presidential cycle ago. 110 through the 2 weeks. Right now we are at 69. Nice. You know what that equates to? Basically every starting quarterback in the NFL threw 1 touchdown per week. Because that is 32 games total. So that's basically a roughly 1 touchdown pass per starting quarterback is what we're looking at right now.
Yeah,
and I have a few theories on this too. Like, we have a few different reasons. One of them could be very simply, defenses are playing 2 high safety, so now they're all check down artists. Kind of. Like, no, because 2 high safeties have been around since 2 safeties were involved. That's nothing new. But I'll go in before I get into my nerd out on this. I'll let you go and touch on that, because those numbers are almost staggering when you look about. We're supposed to be in the golden age of quarterbacks, but the numbers say we are in the 1950s.
I have won so many bets by betting under on passing yardage this year. So many bets. I basically, anything over 2, I'm betting the under as far as passing touchdowns. Anything under 200, couple exceptions to that, I'm betting under for yardage. I can go up to 250 in the alternate yard situation and select under, and I've hit 9 out of the 10. The only one that got me was Gino. My bad. Didn't expect that. And you sit here and you look at this, and as a guy who played O-line, as a guy who loves watching offensive line and protections and different schemes you can scheme up, I will say that pass blocking has declined. That's a big part of it. And if you don't know what I mean the need to pass block has declined. Every offense is built for a RPO in a lot of ways. Most every play for an NFL quarterback nowadays is some form of an RPO. There's some sort of an option route for a receiver. There's usually some sort of mesh point for a quarterback and a running back, or a receiver coming in motion. And yeah, they don't have to pitch it. They don't even have to fake the pitch for it to be a mesh point. It's still considered a mesh point because the chance to pitch that is there. And what that means for an offensive line is they, can't get caught downfield. So their blocking scheme is to sit back and wait and then punch. That's 2 seconds. By the time you complete your punch and re-engage, you're 3 or 4 seconds into a play. So they don't have to continue blocking past that first punch in a lot of cases, or they don't consider that. So you lose a lot of that aspect. You lose a lot of the ability, like the Brett Favres, the Mike Vicks, the Jake Plumbers, to go back even further, where guys are just making plays on an ad lib because their blockers are actually blocking. That's one part of it. Second part of it for me is metrics, and advanced metrics specifically. There are so much heavy emphasis placed on the percentages. And I don't mean like first, second, third down and tendencies type percentages. Those, whatever, I keep those. I mean your fourth down play specifically. The idea, and maybe this came from the Arkansas high school coach who never went for, or never punted, never kicked a field goal, and only kicked onside kicks. Maybe it comes from that era. Possibly. But the idea that all I have to do is gain 2.5 yards per play for 4 downs, and I keep the ball. The time of possession percentages, which were a natural byproduct of the game, where if you win time of percentage, you win the game 75% of the time. Those things have gone so far into we're going to keep staring at these statistics, and this is how we're going to plan our game, that they don't play on the idea of, I have a superstar receiver out here against a 7th round injured corner with a single high safety over the top. Let me take a chance. There's none of that. It's just, all right, going to get my 2.5 yards and get down over and over and over again. And especially in the red zone, you don't have any real ingenuity in the offensive play calling out for a lot of teams. And that's why I think you see a lot more running touchdowns, because there's no other, like for them, they're like, why would I bother? I'll just take my quarterback out, make it 11 on 11. They have to cover all 11 people, let my running back take a direct snap and get it in the end zone. Or this tush push. That's just that was born based off of advanced metrics. So it's a mix of things for me, from game planning not requiring proper blocking, so there's no actual downfield routes, to metrics being a part of it. And I just think there's just too many coaches trying to be too smart. And I think that's part of the issue here. But there's a lot more that I could probably dive into, but I want to give you time to break this one down before I fold it. Because I could nerd out on this one for an hour, but I'll leave it at 5 minutes.
All right, that's good, because I'm about to ramble on. Like I said, the tip-off is DJ's ranting and nerd session, so I apologize everyone in advance. I promise those who can't, those of you that came here to listen to Kelcey, which is most of you, we will have much more of him in the main event. I will get mine out, my spiel out of the way, so just hang in there. One thing you mentioned too is offensive line play. I think that is part of it, not only schematically, but they don't get a chance to practice in the offseason that much, like with how training camps and preseason. So they're not as, I don't want to say callous because that's kind of cheesy, and that applies to defense too, but they're not as callous with true pass blocking, and the defensive linemen are getting freakier, like Myles Garrett, built in a laboratory, Micah
Montez
Parsons.
Sweat.
Exactly. Like that. So you're getting harder to block and you're getting less time to learn how to block them. This, I think, how do I want to word this? Schematically, like you mentioned, as far as everyone being on the same page for different slide protections, identifying which guys get. How many times does it feel like somebody walks right into the quarterback? It happens a lot more now than I feel like we've ever seen before too. Because quarterbacks, which is the next point I'm looking at, are so much more athletic, for better and for worse. For better in that they can sometimes escape some of those, for worse in the cases where they run directly into them sometimes. And I think we see that in the decline with the passing numbers specifically, and it also changes the run game, especially in the red zone. You have Anthony Richardson, you have Caleb Williams, for example. You have a lot of the Jaden Daniels, these athletic quarterbacks. Baker Mayfield, we saw against the Lions, who's not exactly noted 4.3 speed guy himself, but they find ways, they use the quarterbacks in the run game because you get a numbers advantage. I want to throw into another part of it is penalties. I don't know the exact numbers, but penalties have had a huge play on this as well. I don't know the exact numbers. I didn't find this one. Penalties per game, I am willing to bet a lot that over the last few years they have tended to spike, especially in a lot of games. Not just defensive penalties like roughing the passer, those sort of things. What those do is they eliminate passing yards because you tack on 15 yards. That's less passing yards, or defense or pass interference when the quarterback notoriously underthrows the ball. And then when the receiver tries to come back, it's PI. The best pass in football is the underthrown deep pass because it's a guaranteed PI. That's like 30 yards. That doesn't count for anything, but you get the position. So I think penalties that way, plus holding penalties, which is also to the offensive line, where I think a lot of them are so scared to get a holding, it affects their technique as well. Because they're afraid of getting caught outside. Back in the day, it was, you know what, if that guy's about to hit your quarterback, you can clothesline him or hold him, and we're going to give you a fist bump for it. Now it feels like they're almost so scared of holding that it causes them to hold, but it also affects when they don't hold. If that makes sense. It's Schrodinger's box.
Schrodinger's box. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Like, you're basically no matter what, it puts you in a weird position. And I think how I don't know the exact numbers either. I'm sorry, guys. I know I'm the numbers nerd here, but when drives have a holding penalty or an offensive penalty that sets them back, the percentage of drives that get scored on that drops like 20% or something ridiculous like that. If there's a holding play on a drive, the drive is almost dead more often than not, the significant amount of time. So the increase of offensive penalties and defensive penalties, I think, takes a hit on statistics. You mentioned they get in the red zone. All right, well, it's a quarterback run or the running back run. The two high safeties is a factor because no one's going to, it makes it harder to bomb it deep when you have two people sitting 25 yards off the ball. However, they've always had that as a factor. The Tom Brady, Matthew Stafford, those errors, they found a way to rip. They'd still get chunk plays over the seams. They'd be able to layer it over the linebacker into the safety. Every blade of grass was threatened. Now with the whole thing we mentioned earlier, I'm bringing this full circle, everybody. I promise. With with coaches, coordinators that basically having to microwave quarterbacks and win right away, the offenses aren't quite as in depth out of the gate. So it's either bombs away or it's 1-2 read, take off. I think it eliminates some of the abilities to counteract those defenses. You're either getting shot plays, big chunks, or you're stuck and then you're punting. So there's a lot of limitations there. Whereas you would see like some of those other quarterbacks that have been around for a while, they got a chance to learn. They got a chance to study. They take their lumps, see every single defense and change things at the line. All right, you have two high safeties. There's a hole up the seam right there. I'm gonna hit for 30. Oh, the linebacker is Brian Urlacher sprinting straight back. All right, we're gonna get Wes Welker right behind him. He's gonna yak for 15. So there's a 19-yard gain. Now in that situation, it's a 2-yard. It's Joe Burrow, 1, 2, 3, 4, drop it to Zach Moss, rally and tackle for 5 yards. Like, it works, but it takes so much longer to matriculate down the field. It's such that they're overreacting to the too high safety effect, which is
Yeah.
like obviously takes away those shot plays, which is what all of these quarterbacks have been kind of developed for, is to take those shot plays. The Josh Allens, the Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrows, they've been basically developed for their freaky alienness. And unfortunately, what they take away that alienness, now they have to try and adjust the game, and they don't have time to adjust because they get kicked to the curb pretty quickly. So I think there's a lot that goes into it, and I think there's a reason Gardner Minshew, Brock Purdy, Geno Smith, those guys are leading the NFL in passing yards right now. They've been around the block. They see it. They've seen it all. I think Aaron Rodgers would be lighting it up right now if he wasn't clearly still gimpy and had a little bit more off-season time. Like if he didn't basically skip minicamp. I think him and Garrett Wilson would be lighting teams up because he has seen it all and can adjust to all of this. But once again, they got some work to do there. But the way offenses have been designed, I think, is also a very big part of this.
Absolutely, and I think it's telling when before injury, the tragic concussion for Tua again. He look at his offensive style. Look at his team. It's built for the mid to deep type of passing with a couple short options. He doesn't. Jonnu Smith is a short option. Jonnu Smith was eating this year because they were bombing it away to Tyreek and to Jalen Waddle so many times that teams had to adjust. So it went from a too high to all crap. Now you're seeing, a cover 6 situation where it's a combination between a couple things. So whereas you look at pretty much anybody else you can name, let's say Cleveland right now with Deshaun, there's no real ingenuity to a defense right now facing Deshaun. If anybody thinks Dallas's defense was doing anything special in that game in week 1, you're crazy. Dallas's defense dropped into a shell. They dropped into a too deep, cover the flats shell. You have 2 corners on the side that are just sitting a little bit deeper towards the sticks. It's not crazy to think that that's how you can beat a quarterback in today's NFL. Sam Darnold, the reason why he's so successful right now this season is because he's seen these things, because he can adjust. And again, he is still young, as you pointed out earlier. He's still a young guy in the grand scheme of the NFL. He's 26. That's the prime of most people's career, which is wild to think about that he's been in the league this long and he's 26. So give him an opportunity. Let him succeed. Let him do well. And you see what he's doing right now where he's capping off a game with a 30-yard, I guess you can call it a seam route, back shoulder seam to cap off a game. Like, that's
without Justin Jefferson and all that, when all those guys are injured,
without Hawk, without Justin Jefferson, without no, it's crazy to see that what happens when you actually let guys develop. And going back to Bryce, if you let Bryce develop, you can potentially see great results. Is it going to happen every time? No. But Jordan Love, why is Jordan Love so good? The simple answer is he was allowed to develop.
He's allowed to make mistakes now still. Like he still throws dumb picks, but
why was Aaron Rodgers so good? Despite all the complaints from Brett Favre, Rodgers was still allowed to develop. Yes, he did also have the leg break in there that didn't allow things to speed up for Brett Favre to make his exodus. Doesn't matter. Rodgers still came back and was allowed to progress. I think it's so important that these younger players are continued to allow to develop, where the only position you can really try to take that time to try to develop somebody is legitimately at quarterback. But teams want to make quarterbacks like running backs where they're ready to play day one, and that just, you can't do that every time. It's not going to work. Lamar Jackson, Patty, all these guys sat for a good chunk of their first season or their whole first season.
And they
Lamar
went
sat
to
for
loaded
14
teams.
games.
Yeah, and they went to playoff teams on top of it, and they still
Yeah.
got to sit. Like,
It's just, you got to be patient, especially when these kids are first and second overall picks. You got to be patient. That's why I don't expect anything from Caleb this year. That's why these two games are not surprising to me at all for Caleb. It's no offense to Caleb. It's you're trying to make Caleb the next Peyton Manning. Oh, wait, Peyton Manning set the record for interceptions in his rookie year.
still holds it.
Still the record. Crazy. And now he's one of the best players because he was then able to master what he learned and then go beyond that. But these kids aren't taught well enough to develop that quickly anymore, where, well, Peyton was also trained for the first 22 years of his life by his dad. So that's a different story. I mean, maybe a bad example, but it's just, you just got to give these kids time, and expecting them to work out in year one or two is crazy.
It's very interesting because, fun fact too, you mentioned Caleb Williams. This is also very indicative. This was considered one of the best rookie quarterback classes in recent memory, with 6 going in the first round. JJ McCarthy's tied for the lead in touchdown passes among rookies. If anyone who actually, like that, just let that sink in, everybody. As far as touchdown passes by rookies, JJ McCarthy is tied with the other 6 or the other 5. Excuse me.
For those that don't know, JJ McCarthy is yet to play a regular season snap.
Exactly, and the only one who has scored is Jane Daniels on 2 rushing touchdowns inside the 5. Yeah. Like, that's the only. So it takes time to develop. Drake May is sitting right now, and thank goodness, because he needed it. He's incredible. I think he might end up being the best quarterback because he gets to sit now. He might actually end up being the best one. Caleb Williams, I like that he's playing, but the people who put him in the Super Bowl this year, the people who said the Bears are winning the division this year, like, what you wanted to see is you wanted to see him get a little bit better each week, which we did kind of see it between week 1 and week 2, especially when you look at the caliber of opponent. You go from Tennessee, which is weirdly frisky, surprisingly, to Houston, who most people are putting in the Super Bowl right now, or a lot of people are putting in that conversation. Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson were figured out the snap count because it was the same. As soon as the guard taps the center, it was the same snap, ball comes out. It was the same cadence every time. But I saw that from the comfort of my own living room. You know damn well that D'Amico Ryan saw that and he's like, oh, Danielle, Will Anderson, you're going to feast now. There's a reason they were in Caleb's lap the whole time. So passing numbers are declined, and I think it's not because of defenses turning him into checkdown merchants, because that's been a thing forever. The 2007 Patriots only faced 2 high safeties. Once teams were like, oh, we can't let Randy Moss get behind us. It did not matter.
And they're not even disguising. Like, if anybody didn't watch, as much as I don't like Tom Brady as an announcer, I don't like what happened to get Tom Brady as an announcer, I should say.
R.I.P.
As an announcer, in week 2, if you have not heard his analysis on defenses, he says it very simply. They are not disguising anything anymore. They're just dropping back and saying, all right, the only people they need to disguise it against are the veterans who have been in the league, and probably most of them have been around a few times in different teams. So those are the only ones he's pointed out that, they probably have to disguise them. And then you have Patty, and then you have Josh Allen you probably need to disguise things against. Lamar, you have to do some disguising, especially deep safeties. But other than that, everybody else, you could just, all right. We're going to line up in our base defense. Call it 12.
I think the only one who truly does a lot of disguising and pre-snap movement is Brian Flores in Minnesota. And that's why they're even Brock Purdy at the end of it. He's like, Brian, your scheme is ridiculous, man. They caught that on the NFL Sounds thing. Like, he has people moving all over the place before the snap. They are in a 2 high shell and they end up in cover 0 somehow. Yeah. Or they have everybody on the line and end up in cover 2.
Yeah. Should have been a defensive coach his entire career.
That's 100%.
Could be all I have to say about that.
Could be a head coach right now, realistically. Somebody should consider looking at him. 100%.
He needs to keep in his lane when it comes to defensive mindedness. But yeah.
Him and Tua was a bad match, it would appear. Yeah. But I think there is certain scenarios where I think he could what he has defensively, what we see Mike McDonald do with Seattle and we did with Baltimore last year. It was a very, very simple fronts but everything was the same as far as like how it looked and how it was called, but you could change things so easily because the fronts were the same. So it looked the same to every quarterback, but then at post snap, it was like, oh my God, how did Kyle Hamilton end up on my back? He was just playing backside corner or front side corner. So I think defenses are obviously a lot more schematically better. But I think offenses have become schematically dull because they have to be effective. They have to be Lunchables. They have to be microwave dinners real quickly. And I think we see that too with the rookie quarterbacks that come out flying. CJ is the anomaly. If you give him time, I think things tend to work out. Matthew Stafford wasn't a perfect product out of the gate in Detroit, but they let him sling it. They made the playoffs in Detroit with Matthew Stafford a couple of times too, 2011 notably. And the last thing I'll kind of round off to with that, it does show in the numbers too. Last year, Tua led the NFL in passing yards at 4,600. You mentioned his game kind of fits to when it's not below 40 degrees out, his game kind of fits to go after some of these situations. You know where he would have ranked in just 2021, just a few years ago, with his 46-34 passing yards?
I'm gonna guess 15th.
Okay, not that bad. Now he'd have been like 7. Like they're like 46 is still a lot, but there was 2 guys that cracked 5,000 not even 3 years ago. Derek Carr had 4,800. That was the year that him and Hunter Renfrow led them to the playoffs. That was not that long ago. That was, but you look at it, the Raiders have had 3 coaches since that point. So that's another thing is the massive coaching turnover. The Panthers have had 3, I think, 3 or 4, and 7 different starting quarterbacks. So passing numbers are in decline. I think it'll be one of those things that's overcorrected this way. I think it'll recorrect over time too. I just think the obsession with the alien quarterback, I think, has also had a play to it because they grab the alien, they do what he does well, but then defenses adjust and then we're stuck in the mud. And I think that's one thing the Colts have to face with Anthony Richardson. That's one thing I think the Bills faced a little bit of Josh Allen, but they were such a good team and he learned and got through it. And he actually had time to develop. So just some food for thought with passing numbers. I think there's a lot of interesting statistical anomalies to get into it, but it's gone to the point right now where kickers are the deadliest weapon on the field right now with what they can do on the kickoff as well, where if they hop it right, they start at the 20. So
give me every kicker in the draft. I've stood by this statement that the kicker is the most important team to your most important player to your fantasy team for the last 3 years, and will continue to be so until proven otherwise. Just look at Justin Tucker over 50 yards right now. Sucks.
Not so good right now.
Yeah, Daniel Carlson over 50.
Pretty
Only
good.
missed one.
Brandon Aubrey, elite from everywhere, basically.
Yeah.
Best kicker in the game right now. Probably be good from 70 if they would have let him try it week 1, but you know what? We digress.
It would have been great.
Either way. That's enough of DJ's rambling on numbers. We've heard enough of my voice. So, Kelcey, it is now your time to shine. As you talk about you have been betting the under a lot on these passing things, and they have helped you supplement your income in very slight amounts, we'll say. But, Kelcey, it is time for you to take the show here. It's not DJ's best bets. It is Kelcey's greatest gamble, and we're going to flip a coin on this one.
Yeah, we are going to flip a coin, as we talked about. Bets are all over the place, right? Especially with me, I can go good, I can go cold, I can go warm. Well, half the time, as my last name is Coin, I like to just flip a coin. So there we go. The coin flip. If you guys don't know, last week we did this for the first time. I took Arizona over K-State. It was an underdog performance, plus 260, I believe, by the time it was game time. Arizona did not pull through. I'm sorry to say I lost that one. It's okay. I made up for it in the unders. But this week we're going to go a little different. We're going with a team that's still undefeated. Michigan State, going against a BC team who is not undefeated. Yes, they're playing in Boston College, but last time I checked, Boston College isn't a great home environment. My camera doesn't shake too much when I play there on CFB 25. That's for sure. But no, look, Michigan State is built to win. What they're trying to do, what they're trying to create in Michigan State again, is there to succeed. It's a small underdog, but plus 210 with a 7-point spread. I think it's safe to say you can take both. If you want to, for me personally, I'm going to stick with just the straight money line because I think BC can keep it within a touchdown. I put the spread up here just in case you're spread better. That's the way to go. But for me, this week's coin flip, I'm going with Michigan State money line plus 210. Win you a couple dollars on a dollar bet.
And that bet is placed. So I'm putting my faith in you, Kelcey. So it's DJ's long shot. It's flipping the coin here and going with Kelcey's great gamble. We'll see if I can win a little bit of money on that one. See if he can help me out for sure. So, and of course, as the betting degenerate nerds we are, be sure to tune in Sunday for DJ's best bets as well as we head into NFL Sunday. So Either we'll both be winning a lot of money, one of us will be winning a lot of money, or we are not held liable for any lost money during this programming or any bets placed on behalf of it.
Exactly. And guys, just so you're aware, just to make this announcement, because if it's not clear yet, betting can turn into a problem if you're not careful. It is Mental Health Awareness Suicide Prevention Month. Sometimes losses lead to different thoughts. Be careful, bet safe. If you do find out you have a problem, 1-800-GAMBLER is the national helpline for that. And be sure to get help if you need it. Only bet what you can afford. Don't go crazy.
Absolutely. It's supposed to be fun and games, not necessarily anything that could change your life for the worse. But that's going to do it here for the tip off. A very long tip off. So that's going to scoot us right into Kelcey's second favorite part of every show. That is, of course, the main event. And for the main event, we're going to keep this real quick, fun, and simple. We're looking at the NFL. There's a handful of 2-0 teams left, too. Not all of them are ones that we thought of for sure. We're going to go down the gauntlet, though. We're going to go frauds or for real. We're going to start with right off the top. Kansas City Chiefs. Kelcey, frauds or for real?
For real.
Okay, I'm not even that was kind of a joke at that point. We already knew that. Let's move on to the real ones now. The Houston Texans, 2-0, but two very close games, a combined 8-point margin of victory. Kelcey, are they for real or are they frauds?
So I've been 50-50 on the Texans all season. So just to keep it short, I'm going to say both. They're for real and they're going to be a fraud at the end of the season. And I don't mean that in a slight, but I just think they're going to end up around 9-8 at the end of the season, which at the end of the day is not anything bad. But compared to, I guess, the teams the players or fans hoping for 12, 13, 14 wins, probably not the case. So I'm going to say frauds in that aspect, but they're also not totally fake either.
I'm going to say for real for no other reason than you're 2-0. Again, and on top of that, your rest of your division is 0-2, so they got a home playoff game all but locked up at this point. So under those regards, I'm going to make them a for real team. As far as a Super Bowl bet goes, I'm not placing that one. But that they're well on their way for this. We're going to go to the fun one now. The New Orleans Saints, led by the resurgent Derek Carr, Alvin Kamara, and Rashid Shaheed, much to my Chris Olave having fantasy dismay.
Yeah, this one, I'm going to say for real. I like what they're running on offense. And yes, I'm saying that full well knowing I saw Alvin Kamara score 4 touchdowns against the Cowboys last week.
Ooh, my fantasy team won against that too. Pain.
Yeah, and I think if Alvin Kamara is really there and Derek Carr is playing like this successfully for the rest of the season, barring injury, I do think they're for real. That offensive line, the defense seems to be playing really well together right now. There are some gaps that could probably be taken advantage of, but let's not forget they don't have the hardest schedule out of the world, and that's huge. And they play the NFC South, so yeah, I'm gonna say for real. Not expecting double-digit wins by any means, or 13 wins, but I do think they're going to be a playoff team.
They had the 4th most points through the first 2 games of the season of all time. I think they're just behind their 2009 Super Bowl winning team. So I'm going to say for real. And there's something about election year Derek Carr that just hits different. I don't know if it's because his name's DC or what it is, but 2016
as long as he stays healthy.
He was MVP until his leg snapped in 2016, and 2020 was the second best year for passing yards. So there's something about election year DC. So you know what? I'm going to say for real adjacent. I'm going to say they're for real for now. They might build up a big enough lead to where it doesn't matter down the stretch. But I do think that old roster on defense is going to catch up to them a little bit. And I don't think you can bomb it to Rashid Shaheed every single play. Maybe you can. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. I think eventually teams are going to be like, no.
I still think they haven't unlocked the best of Juwan Johnson and Chris Olave yet. I think they're just starting to scratch the surface how good they could be. And these guys are good.
Absolutely. And I think Derek Carr, he is kind of one of those quarterbacks. He has seen so much. He's been through it all. He is that 2010s, early 2020s type of quarterback. And I think he has found a way to attack these defenses that have been stagnant for those other quarterbacks. So I think that's why we're seeing a resurgence from him. We're sticking in the NFC South. You mentioned they get to play the NFC South. They got 2 undefeated teams right now because the Bake Show, Baker Mayfield, and Tampa Bay. For real, frauds, or shoot, I don't know, which I know the answer, but let's hear it, Kelcey.
Oh, they're for real. I've loved what Baker's been doing since he got to Tampa. Mike Evans is a walking 1,007. If you don't know what I mean, 1,000 yards, 7 touchdowns minimum. Godwin, which by the way, I learned his first name is Rod today. I forget who sent me that meme. Rod God is God. That's fantastic. Anyways, he's a legit threat. K. Dotton is still K. Dotton. People might have forgot last year, but let's not get it twisted. And that defense, even with Antoine Winfield injured, looks pretty dang good anyways. So, yeah, I like the Buccaneers. I'm going to say they're for real.
What's interesting is they're thought of as having an old roster from like the Super Bowl run a few years ago. They actually have one of the younger rosters in the NFL by over when you encompass everything. I think it's like 20 average age of 27. Like they're in the youngest 5 rosters, if I'm not mistaken, which is funny when you look at the OGs they have on the team. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna go with for real as well, but in the same vein of the Saints is they're for real because you beat the Lions. You can't call them frauds after you beat the Lions. We all hold the Lions in such high regard. So I'm going to say for real, but I am going to be curious as we go down the stretch as well. I'm curious with the Bucky Irving thing if they're going to be able to run the ball consistently with him, Rashad White. There's there's some interesting things that will play out there for sure that I'm really keeping an eye on. I'm looking forward to. But speaking of running the ball, those Los Angeles Chargers led by Justin Harbaugh and J.K. Dobbins, for real or frauds?
Did you do Justin Harbaugh? I just need to make sure I heard that
Yeah,
right.
I combined them because, like, Justin Herbert hasn't exactly set the world on fire, so I can't go all led by Justin Herbert, but I refuse to give Jim Harbaugh all the credit. Not until he wears normal shoes.
I am gonna say for real, and that purely goes off of my preseason prediction where I had them doing pretty dang good. So I'm gonna keep riding that momentum and say that the Chargers are built. Look, they came out in formations where they had 11 men inside the box, and they had 10 men inside the box with one man running a route, and that one man got open. That's all I got to see to say that you can win in the playoffs in any environment, including snow-ridden, miserable, wherever you have to go. Which in the NFC isn't very many places nowadays. Maybe Green Bay. So yeah, you should be fine. So give me the. Oh, sorry, you said Chargers. So in that case, Baltimore.
Hmm,
So yeah,
Kansas City.
we're gonna. Yeah, I'm gonna say give me the Chargers for real. Well, hey, right now they got a home playoff against Kansas City. So
Yes. I'm gonna go fraudulent, but I don't want to say like they're gonna remain fraudulent. It's not an indictment on them. It's because they played the Raiders and the Panthers so far. That's the only reason I'm doing that is because strength of schedule. They haven't had to throw the ball. They haven't had to see what they get. No one's been able to take away J.K. Dobbins at this point, which I did not think I'd be saying this year. Which is good for J.K. Dobbins. He has been through some ish, so I love to see it. Love to see a Michigan head coach running a Buckeye Wild out there. So it's it.
wow.
Who says that after you get out of college you can't become friends? But I want to see what happens when a team finally says, "Thou shall not pass," and then they force him to have to throw to Joshua Palmer, Quentin Johnson, who is much improved, Lad McConkey. I want to see how that plays out. I also want to mention though, Joe Alt-Delete is the best offensive lineman rookie that we have seen since Quentin Nelson, and he should be in that consideration for Rookie of the Year, just like Quentin Nelson was at the time. And yes, I did. His nickname is Joe Alt-Delete, and I will be calling that. I did not think of it; someone else did, but that is his new name on the show, and he will only be referred to as that because he's been
I need
sensational.
I need that on the shirt. That's all I got to say.
We will have high low branded shirts with a little under thing says we didn't think of this, we just love it.
No credit taken.
None whatsoever. And then, if I'm not mistaken, this will be the last 2-0 team. Actually, there's 2 more. Sorry, we'll go quickly. Pittsburgh Steelers, 1 scored touchdown through 2 games, yet undefeated. Fraudulent or for real?
Frauds.
We're in the same
Frauds.
agreement. They defensively, they're awesome. Justin Fields has been very efficient, but that's not going to keep up as they keep going. So,
Not just fraud, but fraud exclamation point.
playoff team,
They're
maybe.
they're gonna start Russell Wilson at some point in time, and that's gonna prove my point.
Fair point. But and then the Seattle Seahawks now 2-0 and leading the NFC West, surprisingly.
Yeah.
This is tough.
This one I'm gonna say 50-50 on because I'm still not sold on them because their defense has given up yards, but then at the same time they've outperformed themselves at this within the same breath. I if their offense can stay healthy, I'm gonna say for real. Given the fact Kenneth Walker missed a game already, I'm gonna say 50-50.
Since it is frauds or for real, I won't take 50-50.
Hey, you offered it earlier. That's all I got to say.
I know, and I retracted it. Unfortunately, just didn't do it fast enough because you already ran through that whole like the Kool-Aid man. But I'm gonna say fraudulent based on who they've played. Once again, the Patriots might be underratedly decent, so they might be better than we thought. But we know offensively they're limited, and a Mike McDonald defense is gonna crash on them. And then they beat the piss out of the Broncos, who are hopefully they're letting Bo Nix develop. Hopefully they're not giving up on him because he's 24 after a few weeks. Hopefully they actually give him time to develop as well. But so I'm gonna say fraudulent adjacent. Not that they're a fraudulent team. I just need to see them beat somebody that has a win that has 2 wins coming up. We'll see as the schedule goes along. Beat somebody in their division. Once they do that, I'm sold. Even if it's the Rams. I had them in the playoffs. And last year I had them going to the Super Bowl. So I'm not letting them catch me again. That's what I'm doing. Reverse psychology in this. But I believe we went through all the 2-0 teams. If I am missing anybody, I think we
You're
covered
missing
them all.
2.
Right? I am missing 2 on right because there's the Vikings I had just overlooked. So
But before we get to the Vikings, I want to say that one for last because I think that's a good one to end on. The Bills.
Yeah, they're for real, but they're just always 2-0 in my head. They're the September champions every year, so that's why I forget them. So yeah, they're for real because they still have Josh Allen, and
Yeah,
Khalil Shakir is going to break out.
I agree. Both of those statements.
All right, so we'll just jump
Keon
right to
Coleman's going to have a 2-touchdown game at some point in time.
I'm going
All
to
right,
say he does in
Vikings.
October. The Vikings, for real or fraudulent? Kelcey, you're ready for this one. Take it away.
I'm going to say fraudulent. Now, I'm not going to say that because of the coaching staff, because I think the coaching staff is good.
Elite.
I'm saying that because their players are going to eventually be exposed. There are too many guys filling gaps right now that are supposed to be stopgap players. I don't think Sam Darnold is a long-term decision. And I hope Sam Darnold writes back with a big fat check that says, F you, I did it, as he hoists the Super Bowl trophy. I hope that happens. Because then it'll prove the point that J.J. McCarthy sucks and you don't need him.
Hey, he's leading all rookies in touchdown passes right now. You put some respect on that name.
You know what? Alphabetically doesn't mean you're the sharpest tool in the shed.
He doesn't have alphabetically. He just threw one in the preseason, so he counts.
It's ridiculous. It's stupid. Anyways, I get it. I do like Aaron Jones. I do think there are good players here. There are just far too many players over exceeding expectations right now. And I think that's why they're going to be fraudulent. I don't think I need to go into too much more detail. I think their coaching staff is really good. I think they just need the players to prove that point to the greater league. Because right now you have Jay Jettas, if he can come back healthy, Hawk is, if he can come back healthy, and Aaron Jones, if he can come back healthy. And then that's not to count your 3 offensive linemen that you need to come back healthy as well. So there are concerns, but if they had players fully healthy, it's less concern. So I'm going to say fraudulent for.
I'm going to be in the same boat also, mostly because I need them to stay healthy. Even if they are as good as they look, I need them to not break like they did at the end of the 49ers game. I need everyone to rally and stay healthy. I do think coaching staff top to bottom, they might be one of the top 5 coaching staffs in the game. You have multiple head coaches on that roster right now. It could look like that 2015 Washington team that had like 5 future head coaches with LaFleur, Shanahan, McDaniel, all of them on there. So I think this is a very good coaching staff. So I'm going to say fraudulent adjacent. I don't like it, but they also haven't played through the NFC North yet as well. I think that's going to be where, I mean, even the Bears, who have a combined 150 passing yards in 2 games, are 6 points away from being undefeated. Like, that's a really good division. So we're going to say fraudulent adjacent, but they need to stay healthy is the biggest thing. But we've gone through the undefeateds. There's only one thing to look at. There are quite a few 0-2 teams. So, Kelcey, out of all the 0-2 teams, which one are you least concerned about? Because you can go 0-2 and make the playoffs. It's just damn hard.
Yeah, it's so difficult. I think I'm going to go with the AFC North. I'm going to say the Ravens. I think the Ravens are the team I'm least concerned about, just because I feel like they just haven't gotten guys involved correctly. I think that's where they're at right now. Is just figuring out how this team looks together with Derrick Henry at running back. I think that's a big part of it. So I'm gonna say least concerning is the Ravens, and that tune can 100% change this weekend. But I'm gonna say for right now that they're the least concerning for me.
Absolutely. I'm going to ignore the AFC South since everybody in that division is 0-2 except for Houston.
Yeah,
I'm going to stick in the AFC North, though. I'm going to say Cincinnati Bengals because, for one, they were 0-2 a couple years ago and went to the AFC Championship game. This is their forte, is starting off 0-2. This is what they do best. You had a stinker in week 1, and then you lost by 1 point to Kansas City with some weird calls down the stretch. Whether they were right or wrong, we're not going to debate. Your point is, once again, the average margin of victory when those two play is like 2.5 points. Whatever the spread is, it's pretty much perpetually covered for the underdog. And I think there's going to be more, especially when T. Higgins gets healthy, as they continue to get Amarius Mims gets healthy. They'll be fine. This is what they do best. They'll figure out a way to win 11 games and annoy somebody down the stretch. So I'm going to go with Cincinnati. But if anyone else has a better answer or someone else they like, whether they like Jacksonville, Indy, the Rams, any one of those other teams, let us know in the comment section down below. But that's going to wrap it up for the main event. And that's now going to take us into Kelcey's favorite part of every show. And that is, of course, Crunch Time. And Crunch Time, if you saw last week, is brought to you by our good friends over at RotoBot.
Yeah, guys. So if you guys have not been keeping up with what we've been doing with RotoBot, RotoBot is a fantasy football AI assistant. So last week we asked it a few starting sits. Last week it's also its first week of development, active development. We've been able to use it. And so as it's getting worked on, we're still one of the few guys that get to actually work on this and showcase what we're working on, which is kind of cool. Super fun to do. So last week, let's look at last week. Start sits last week, we asked it 5 questions. Dak or Baker, Anthony Richardson or Kyler Murray, Jerome Ford, J.K. Dobbins, Drake London or Chris Olave, and then last one is Isaiah Likely or Mark Andrews. All right. You see there's one in red, one in green. That's based off of red is the lower scoring player, green is the better scoring player. So, DJ, you missed 2. You missed Dak and Anthony Richardson, but you got 3 right. JK, Drake London, and Mark Andrews. Myself, I got 3 right as well. Missed 2. Baker, Kyler, J.K. Dobbins, all correct. Chris Olave, Isaiah Likely, much to the chagrin of my fantasy football teams. I got wrong. Rotobot, unfortunately, had a tough week last week. Baker, it got resoundingly right. It made a lot of sense for the other 4. Unfortunately, there were not a great week for these guys. Now, a couple of them a lot closer than I would like to, I don't want to discount it because honestly, there were some close matchups in that situation. A couple of them
Drake
just
London's late touchdown was the difference there. Him and Olave were dead even until that point, basically. So
exactly. If it wasn't for J.K. Dobbins,
JK
40-yard touchdown run, that's a completely different score as well. So this week we have 3 starting sits this time. So we're going to roll over here to Rotobot. Now, this week, we're going to start off with a wide receiver. We're going with Michael Pittman versus Amari Cooper. And I already have the answers up here. So DJ Rotobot says for week 3, Michael Pittman faces the Bears, who are strong against perimeter receivers, but weaker in the middle. He projects 11.7 points, is underwhelming, especially with Anthony Richardson's consistent passing. Cooper, on the other hand, going up against the Giants, team that struggles against short to intermediate routes. Cooper's projected 12.1 points, and that's in a PPR league, and higher yardage, despite Deshaun Watson's issues. It says Amari Cooper. What say you?
Yeah, I agree because in fantasy, Michael Pittman's almost to the point of benchable right now. He's just not involved in the offense at all. So I would agree with Amari Cooper, and Josh Downs is coming back, so that's more targets to go around for the Colts this week. He's supposed to be coming back. That Bears defense is incredibly good. Jalen Johnson and the Colts passing offense is just kind of a mess right now as Anthony develops. Him and Alec Pierce are the ones that seem to be clicking. AD and him can't seem to click. There's drop passes or misfires. Michael Pittman, it just hasn't been there this year. I don't know if it's the offense or I don't know what it is. It just has not been this year. He's almost to the point of you play him based on matchup and hope for the best this week. He's no longer a starting receiver in your fantasy team. He's a week to week flex until proven otherwise. So I'm taking Amari Cooper.
I agree with that. I've never been a big fan of Michael Pittman in fantasy. I don't think that's any surprise to anybody who's watched the show. But yeah, I think this is a bigger situation here where Michael Pittman's just until they get that team figured out offensively, it's going to be a struggle. So yeah, I'm going Amari as well, and especially against the Giants right now, 0-2 team who can't seem to buy a win. Yeah, I'm gonna also say that Amari is the better option. So we have a clean sweep here with Amari over Michael Pittman. So we're probably all going to be wrong the rate we're going right now.
The one thing I'll add on to that before we jump off is the Browns actually get the ball for time of possession because their defense stops somebody, where the Colts are averaging like 18 minutes per game for time of possession. It's hard to get anything going when you don't have the ball. So you know what? There's just more opportunities based on time.
Big DJ said, because I'd be lying if I disagreed. But moving into the next matchup, we have quarterback positioning. CJ Stroud versus Derek Carr. Simple answer. Start Derek Carr over CJ Stroud in week 3. Carr has been on fire with back-to-back QB1 finishes and now faces an Eagles secondary that's been torched, giving up the second most fantasy points. I told you.
He humble brag there a little bit, and then the computer completely froze on him. So we're looking at
passing yards.
There we go.
So, and then on the other hand, CJ Stroud, while reliable, faces a tougher matchup against the Vikings. So start Carr with confidence. So DJ,
that's tough because I want to say CJ Stroud because it feels like that's always the smart pick. And the Vikings, like we joked about, you can't keep getting away with it. But I can't trust the Eagles defense at this point. I think it's hard, and who am I to bet against Derek Carr at this point? I need Chris Olave to start cooking for my fantasy team. So I think this is the week Chris Olave gets involved, which means by association, Derek Carr gets going too. I think it's going to be a shootout. So I think there's just going to be a lot more opportunities. So I'll take Derek Carr this week.
Yeah, I get that. I think Derek Carr would be a safe pick, but screw it. I've talked enough crap about CJ Stroud this year. I'm going to say CJ Stroud 2-0. I said they're 50-50 for me. I'm going to stick by it. I'm going to say 50-50. I'm going to say it's going to be another good week for CJ Stroud. So I'm going to go different from everybody else, from Roto, from DJ. I'm going with CJ Stroud this time. So I'll go Stroud. You and the bot are on Derek Carr.
What a
Hopefully,
good problem to have, though, between Carr and Stroud. What a good problem to have.
yeah. Somebody was very smart. Honestly, I saw people picking up Derek Carr today, and I was like, smart. Finally decided to get off the snide. Mind
Hmm.
you, I'm sitting here with Baker on my bench in some leagues, and I'm like, can I start him over Josh Allen? Can I start him over Josh? By the way, start Baker over Josh Allen.
Me with Kyler Murray and Anthony Richardson, but we won't talk about that.
That's a bonus.
Hmm.
All right, last one, DJ. We're going to the running back position. Travis Etienne versus Josh Jacobs. Now, before I get into Rotobots, answer, DJ, I want you to give your answer.
That's a tough one. It really is. I think Travis Etienne has more opportunities, or he should, because he's a better receiver, and Jacksonville needs to get going by all means. I'm going to take Josh Jacobs, though, because I think it might be Malik Willis again, and they showed absolutely no remorse about running that what out of that ball. Like, they handed him the ball. He hit the over in the first drive. They have no problems giving the ball, and he has no problem toting it. I think he will get a little bit involved in the passing game. I think Travis Etienne, Tank Bigsby's taking some carries from him. They keep finding themselves behind where they have to just throw it all over the place, which I'm going to take Josh Jacobs, but that's a close one for sure. I'm going to take Josh Jacobs, though.
Yeah, what makes this a little more curious to me is the fact that you mentioned Tank Bigsby. He is hurt this week. So that does, well, he's doubtful, I should say. But he missed the end of last week due to injury. We saw Travis Etienne have a pretty good week. If he's not there again this week, I could see that being the case. But as a Josh Jacobs owner in 2 out of my 4 leagues, I'm going to go with the smart pick here for me. And I'm going to say Josh Jacobs as well.
In that case, though, I'm going to overwrite and I'm going to take ETN because I thought Tank Bigsby was there. If he is out or even that banged up, give me.
He's doubtful for the week.
Give me ETN then, because they got to get the ball to ETN. I think they play Buffalo this week. They got to move the ball. So give me ETN. I changed my mind now that I know the Tank.
All right.
This is a Tank Bigsby stand account, so with him out there, it's okay.
This is a Tank Bigsby stand account. But Rotobot, on the other hand, DJ, he says you should. Rotobot says you should have stayed with your first pick. Just to sum it up, as you said, ETN faces Buffalo, which is allowing the second most fantasy points to opposing running backs. But Jacksonville's offense is inconsistent, which gives ETN a projection of 13.3 points this week. Conversely, Jacobs matched up against Tennessee's stout run defense, which does rank in top 10 in multiple defensive metrics. However, as you said, he is a volume king with Malik Willis, projected at 18 carries and 13 points this week. He is given the Rotobot is given the nod to Josh Jacobs. Mind you, it does give a lower point prediction in this, so I do find it interesting. However, he's reliable, and I think that's the case that Rotobot's giving. And I'm with the Rotobot on this one. I think Josh Jacobs is the reliable choice. So yeah, I'm going to support this one and wholeheartedly and put my stamp of approval on Josh Jacobs, most for my fantasy football team's sake. So I agree with Rotobot.
It even said start him with confidence. So Rotobot is feeling Josh Jacobs as well.
Oh, don't worry. Josh Jacobs was not moving from the starting roster no matter what.
No, at this point, I feel like he is locked in his point. I'm curious with Travis Etienne how they're going to use him because there's no Evan Ingram now, too. They have to have somebody to catch underneath because Brian Thomas Jr. is out there somewhere. He's not close. But that's the thing. He's out there somewhere. So you need someone intermediately. So we'll see. Once again, that's a good problem to have.
Davis. Jackson.
Well, he's always out there somewhere too. He doesn't run anything under 40 yards, as we saw. He's a bombs away guy only. He's a bombs away or a lead blocker.
Yeah, well, that's fair. But yeah, that'll do it for the Rotobot. So just to recap, it's going with Amari, Derek Carr, and Josh Jacobs. DJ, you said Amari, Derek Carr, and Travis Etienne. I also went Amari, but CJ Stroud and Josh Jacobs. So we're 50-50 on agreeing since we all went with Amari. Yeah. Makes sense.
It should be fun. Somehow we're all going to be wrong, some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, they're going to tie. They're all going to tie.
They're all going to tie, or they're all going to just not play. Something's going to happen to be like, nope, not a single one of these guys played. It's like, you got to be kidding. How do we pull this off?
I'm betting all of them at any time touchdown. I better get my money back if that's the case.
Absolutely. But once again, we appreciate y'all for joining us here on this Wednesday evening, or for what's on your favorite places to watch, listen to podcasts later in the week. It was fun getting to talk about all my nerdy stuff, Kelcey's new coin flip, and get a little bit of help from Rotobot with fantasy. Once again, follow us on all socials, HighLowSports Pod at just about everything. And once again, be sure to tune in on Friday for Fantasy Football Fridays and Sunday for DJ's Best Bets heading into the NFL Sunday. And be sure to check in on Saturday because if Kelcey's long shot hits or flip a coin, it keep coming in. So be sure to check on that one on Saturday as well, too. Michigan State money line or spread. We're in Kelcey's coin flip, we believe. But that's going to do it for us here today. We appreciate y'all for joining us, and we'll see you all again next week.